Two men were murdered while sleeping in their bed. One night later, an arson fire destroyed a family planning clinic. Investigators wondered whether some shards of glass, paint chips, and a chicken feather could link what appeared to be two separate crimes. On the morning of July 1st, 1999, Oscar Mattson called his son Gary. No one answered the phone, but there was an unusual message on the answering machine.
Hi everybody, this is Gary. We came down with something pretty bad, pretty suddenly, and we're going to go back to a specialist friend of ours in the Bay Area. We'll see you guys in about a week. Okay, bye.
It clearly wasn't Gary's voice. And at that point, they became very concerned.
Family members drove out to Gary's home.
He came up to the house and called loudly. Nobody answered. He walked in and saw a foot sticking up on the bed. And I think at that point he realized what had happened.
Gary and his partner, Winfield Mowder, had been shot to death in their loft bed with a .22 caliber pistol.
It was just a tremendous shock when I don't know that I was ever in denial. I was in instant depression.
The trail of empty cartridge cases and the location of the blood spatter told investigators where the shooter had stood.
The shooter walked towards the loft. I think the people in the loft got up to see what was going on, and then they started being shot, and the shooter got closer to the loft and then basically finished them off.
It was an overkill, basically, with each of them being shot multiple times like that. It was like somebody was trying to send a signal to us, or there was something that they wanted to say about how they killed these people.
The killer then recorded a new message on the telephone answering machine saying the two men were away on a trip. The autopsy revealed Gary and Winfield were killed between midnight and 4 a.m. Winfield's car was missing from their home, along with Gary's credit card and driver's license. Gary's family didn't believe the murder was a random act.
We felt very strongly early on that it was a hate crime, that they were murdered because they were gay, because they both were active in gay rights issues. So we just had a strong feeling. We just knew it was a hate crime. I did anyway.
You know, everybody was looking over their shoulder, you know, wondering what was going on, if they would be next. I think the fact that someone goes into your home and shoots you to death in your bed disturbed everybody in this community.
Gary Mattson and Winfield Mowder had lived together for 16 years and owned a landscaping and nursery business. They had no known enemies. 6 days after the murders, police found Winfield's car on a deserted road about 100 miles away. Gary Mattson's driver's license and credit card were not inside. Investigators asked the bank when the credit card was last used, and they got a surprise. The card had been used after Gary's murder to purchase some gun-related equipment.
They had purchased almost $2,000 in reloading equipment, ammunition reloading equipment, and the person that had made the purchase had requested that it be sent to a P.O. box in Yuba City.
That is really dumb. Criminals do dumb things, and you have to wonder whether they have some kind of subconscious urge to be caught.
Investigators set up surveillance, hoping the killer would walk into their trap. When Winfield Mowder and Gary Mattson were murdered, The only items missing from their home were Mattson's driver's license and credit card. Immediately after the murders, Mattson's credit card was in use.
They used the victim's credit cards within hours of the murders. The murders were probably committed around 3 o'clock in the morning on July 1st, and that same day in the afternoon they spent about $1,000 in a shoe store, and they stopped at several other stores and used the credit card.
And the credit card was also used to purchase some gun-related equipment. The person using the card had the item shipped to a post office box in a town about a 2-hour drive away. Police headed straight to the address where the items had been shipped. Sure enough, they saw 2 men carrying boxes out to their car. They were identified as 32-year-old Matthew Williams and his 29-year-old brother Tyler. Inside the car, detectives found Gary Mattson's credit card and driver's license. In the brothers' home, police found several newspaper articles about an arson spree that occurred 2 weeks before Gary and Winfield's murder. Three synagogues burned on the same night. All were arson, and at each one, hate literature littered the crime scenes.
The flyers were found kind of randomly dispersed, thrown throughout the synagogue and also on the outside as well, in almost a random fashion.
Police found similar literature in the boys' apartment.
Thousands of pages of hate literature, anti-Semitic literature, racist literature, all kinds of white supremacist stuff.
Gas chromatography identified the chemical makeup of the accelerant used in the arsons. In the boys' possession was a book on arson, which recommended the same chemical mixture. A second book described the best techniques for breaking and entering.
It describes the best times to break in between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., and all our arsons were within that time frame.
And a third book recommended wearing coveralls to commit crime. Investigators found coveralls in the brothers' closet, similar to the ones the book recommended. Investigators found nothing in the Williams home that tied them to the murders of Gary Mattson and Winfield Mowder, but they found other forensic evidence.
I looked at the suspect's car first, and probably the only thing that I recovered that was of significance was glass.
The glass appeared to be safety glass, the type used in windows and doors.
When it breaks, you actually have hundreds, if not thousands, of small particles of glass that will come back towards the person breaking the glass. And it'll become embedded in your clothing, even though you can't see it.
In the trunk of the car were 2 black crowbars. One had green paint scrape marks. Could forensic scientists make any scientific connection between the murders, the arsons, and the Williams brothers?
It's hard to describe, to see, especially the film footage of the B'nai Israel and flames pouring out of the structure.
Initially, we looked at the extremist groups in the Sacramento area. There were several groups such as neo-Nazi, skinhead, hate groups that had in the past vandalized synagogues and other houses of worship.
As police searched for Gary Mattson and Winfield Mowder's killer, they inadvertently found evidence linking their murder suspects to the arson fires set to 3 California synagogues in the same night. All of the evidence from Matthew and Tyler Williams' car and apartment was sent to criminalist Faye Springer, an expert in trace evidence. She started with the glass shards found in the suspect's car.
Glass is not an organic material, so it's just made from silicon dioxide, sand basically, and melted. So glass varies a lot by refractive index, and depending on how it's made and what materials go into making it.
3 wavelengths of visible light are passed through the glass. The reflection of that light is measured under the refractive light index. Springer compared the glass in the suspect's car to the broken glass at the synagogues.
Glass at the arson at the synagogue was similar to glass in the suspect vehicle. It was the same type of glass, and it had the same physical properties and chemical properties.
Blue coveralls found in the Williams brothers' home also contained glass fragments. So did 2 other objects found in the brothers' car.
The crowbars were sent down to my laboratory because we suspected that their synagogue arsons were either used crowbars or bats. Eventually we found some glass fragments that were similar to glass that was collected.
Microscopic examination of the crowbars also revealed green paint.
I'd called and asked them, where the green paint came from, because I knew none of the synagogues had green paint on them. So I'd been to all of them. And they said, well, the only thing that we have is this fire at this medical clinic office building.
The medical office building was actually an abortion clinic which had burned the day after Gary and Winfield's murder. The abortion clinic had green trim around the doors where the arsonists entered the building. Springer compared these samples to the paint on the crowbar using pyrolysis gas chromatography.
What it does is it allows you to look at the organic profile of the paint. And with paints, it's not just one chemical that goes into making a paint. There's lots of chemicals that go into a paint, and they give you kind of a profile of what that paint looks like. And when we analyze it, we look at the combination of all of those materials together.
The paint on the crowbar had the same chemical composition as the paint from the abortion clinic.
So there we had a double transfer from the medical clinic going to that crowbar, and that crowbar going to that synagogue.
Forensic proof that the 3 synagogue arsons and the abortion clinic arson were connected. And forensic scientists got lucky with some other evidence. Not all of the firebombs placed inside the synagogues ignited.
Extremely fortuitous that you would have unburnt material left at a crime scene.
The surviving firebombs were plastic containers of flammable liquid with homemade wicks made of cloth. But in the cloth were some unusual items, including dog hairs, cat hairs, and even chicken feathers. When Springer went to the Williams home, she knew she had something.
I saw all the bird cages and I thought, oh man, you're gonna have one bird of every kind that ever walked the earth.
I got excited very quickly. They had 3 dogs. They had a chicken coop in the back.
Taking the chicken samples wasn't easy.
We just scare them so they're flapping all over the place, and then we get the loose feathers.
The hair from the Williams dog and cat, as well as the chicken feathers, were microscopically consistent with the hair and feather evidence contained in the wick of the firebomb. And the chemical makeup of the light blue paint on the Williams family tool shed matched the blue paint found on one of the synagogue firebombs.
There was just too many coincidences. The feathers, the dogs, the same kind of paint. I had a lot of confidence that these materials were going to show that the bottles came from that location.
With the synagogue and abortion clinic arson solved, there were still 2 remaining questions. Did the Williams brothers kill Gary and Winfield? And was there forensic evidence to prove it? After the two Williams brothers were linked to the 4 California arson fires, investigators still needed to solve the murders of Gary Mattson and Winfield Mowder.
What we wanted to do was to see if forensically we could get evidence that would, at a later time, lead us and help us prove which individuals committed the crimes.
Detectives searched a small cottage behind the Williams brothers' parents' home and found guns and a book on how to make a homemade silencer. A .22 caliber pistol in the brothers' possession had the same homemade silencer.
This had some gray tape or duct tape on the end of it, and it had a small hole on the end of that. And you could actually visually see light through that hole.
On the end of the tape was a tiny speck of blood, which was sent to the lab for DNA analysis.
One of the victims was within a couple feet of the victim when it was fired, to put that small of a droplet on the end of that piece of tape.
Mark Fisher processed the Williams gun.
The process was a Mark II .22 caliber pistol, which I developed 3 latent impressions and ultimately identified all 3 as being made by James Tyler Williams, the younger brother.
But was this the gun used to kill Winfield and Gary?
When the cartridge is discharged, the cartridge case itself expands and it picks up an impression of the chamber of the gun.
Firearms experts test-fired the .22 caliber pistol and compared those spent cartridges with those found in Gary and Winfield's home.
Based on this comparison, I was able to conclude that that Mark II pistol was in fact the one that had been used to fire the components at the scene.
Finally, the DNA testing of the blood found on the end of that pistol confirmed the blood was Winfield Mowder's. The Williams brothers lived only a few miles from the home Gary and Winfield shared. Prosecutors believe the Williams brothers targeted the couple because they were gay. Matthew Williams knew Winfield Mowder because they had worked together briefly at the local farmers market. Investigators also discovered the brothers were heavily influenced by groups that expressed contempt for gays, Jews, minorities, and abortion rights.
They are absolutely a part of that extremist Christian movement that strongly believes that homosexuals are evil and a scourge of the earth.
On September 8, 2001, the Williams brothers pled guilty to arson. While awaiting trial, Matthew Williams committed suicide.
It's just fine with me that he killed himself. It's fine with me, except for the fact that it would have been nice to have him stand up in court and let the world see what kind of a person he was.
Although they did kill 2 individuals and cause millions of dollars worth of destruction, they failed to ignite this so-called revolution, this uprising against certain institutions.
His younger brother Tyler pled guilty to arson and first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Every year, on the anniversary of Winfield and Gary's death, there's a celebration of life and diversity in Redding, California.
Today, in memory of Gary and Winfield, I ask all of you to begin teaching respect for people's differences.
This was a case where the forensic evidence identified a trail. Glass from the arsons gets trapped in the perpetrator's clothing, then transferred to his car seat. Paint from the abortion clinic and glass from the synagogue is transferred onto the 2 crowbars found in the suspect's trunk. A chicken feather dog and cat hairs cling to a shirt worn by the perpetrator, a shirt that's later cut into pieces to make the wick in a firebomb. All identified by forensic scientists who often see evidence that to others looks like dirt.
Whether it be the paint chips or the glass fragments, the dog hairs, or the chicken feathers, each one is an independent action. And so then it becomes very significant when you have multiple independent actions all associated to the same place.
It's great for us because it gives us the assurance that we've got the right people and helps us prove the case at the same time.
Well, it's made my job easier. It's made it harder for criminals to get away with their acts, even smart ones.